Hey, I'm a reading channel now. Have you ever purchased a book from an airport? Last week I did just that. It was overpriced and I should have just waited until I had access to a library, but I'll tell you why I did it. When you're in a bookstore, generally the only part of the book you'll see is the cover, from which the contents shouldn't be judged, or so I'm told. And while I was in this airport bookshop, I couldn't help but notice that all the books looked the same. It's like the publishers have found this perfect formula for a best-selling book cover and decreed that all books must adhere lest they lose revenue by being different. It's very much the same trend you'll see with movie posters or game box art, and because I'm a cynical old man at the age of 20, I don't like it. I thought to myself, I vehemently refuse to be intrigued or engaged by any of these conservative covers that just pander to mainstream marketing. Wallowing in my superiority, I glimpsed a book cover that knocked my bum right off its axis. It was love at first sight. Perhaps if I hadn't been surrounded by such homogeneous garbage, I would have just simply glanced over it and moved on. But as things were, this book shone like a plum in a pear patch. I caved. Before the Coffee Gets Cold. You'll notice it says Japanese bestseller right at the top here. This really intrigued me. It's always interesting to break out of the English-speaking sphere that most of us live in and consume some international media. This would be my first translated novel, and I was hoping it would expand my horizons somewhat. Jesus Christ, it is bad. The premise is rather interesting. There's a special cafe that allows you to travel through time. But hold on, before you start doing anything interesting, there's a few little rules you gotta follow. Rule 1, you can only time travel once, so make it count. Rule 2, no matter what happens, you can't change the present. This is an interesting one. You'd think it excludes the possibility of something genuinely exciting happening, and it does, but I think this rule is core to the type of story this book is trying to be, that being using your past to reconcile your emotional uncertainties. The way it explains this rule is pretty weird though. It effectively says that while the present can't be changed, the past can, and that through a series of cosmic coincidences, things will end up the same as they already were. At risk of trying to disprove the impossible, I feel like the story sort of trips itself up with this explanation. For example, one character goes back in time and takes a letter from her husband, except her husband still has the letter in the present, like he never gave it away. For a book about time travel, I feel like the inconsistencies demonstrate a failure to properly commit to the idea. Am I nitpicking? I feel like I'm nitpicking. Let's move on. Rule number 3, you can only sit in that seat specifically, and when you time travel, you cannot move from that seat specifically, meaning you can only visit this cafe. Also, it is very difficult to sit in that seat because a ghost lady sits there 24/7 and she will curse you if you try to. The only way the characters can sit in this seat is if the ghost lady gets up to go to the toilet. Rule number 4, being served coffee sends you back in time, and drinking that coffee will return you to the present, and if the coffee goes cold before you drink it, you become the peeing ghost. So you gotta drink up before the coffee gets cold. It's the title. The book does not explain why any of these rules exist, and just expects you to accept it as part of the fiction. Someone had entered the cafe. To enter this cafe, one has to descend the stairs from ground level and go in through a large door 2 meters high, made out of solid wood. It's when this door opens that the bell sounds, but the visitor does not immediately appear at the entrance, as a small patch of flooring must be crossed first. Once the bell rings, there is a time lag of a few seconds before the visitor takes 1 or 2 of those steps and enters the cafe. So when the bell rang, Kohtake had no idea who had come in. Was it character A or B? She noticed how nervous the suspense was making her. Her heart was racing in excitement. If it was character B, she would probably do this, but character C, on the other hand, well, they would probably just do this. That would be a disappointment. Kohtake played out the various scenarios in her head, but the person who appeared was neither B or C. Standing there in the doorway was D. Oh, Kohtake said. His sudden appearance had taken her by surprise. It was him she had come to see, but she hadn't been expecting to see him walk into the cafe right then. The first thing I noticed while reading this was the way it was written. It felt disjointed and overly simple and unbearably sluggish. Every single paragraph takes an excruciating amount of time to get to the point. I would say this book is about 10% descriptions of peoples and places, 30% recollections and flashbacks, 50% internal monologue, and only 10% plot. Last year I watched season 1 of My Hero Academia, and it was a startlingly similar experience to this, where every little detail had to be extensively hammered home, and I guess the creator assumes that we've just got the memory and social awareness of an anime fan. I just got done reading the literature of Terry Pratchett, a man whose writing is notoriously pithy, and so the jump from reading this to this was jarring to say the least. Let's see it. Reading from page 12. This should be good. Oh, this is the bit where they're explaining the rules of going back in time. Alright. Look, I want you to listen, and listen carefully, okay? What? You can go back in time. It's true. You can go back, but when you go back, no matter how hard you try, the present won't change. The present won't change? Eh? Even if you go back to the past and tell your boyfriend how you feel, even if I tell him how I feel, the present won't change. What? It won't change the fact that he's gone to America. Even if you return to the past, reveal your feelings and ask him not to go, it won't change the present. I don't claim to know why this reads like the first work of a 12-year-old, but I suspect that this is a clue. I don't mean to suggest that Japanese literature is bad, but I do sense a cultural divide of some sort. I can't help but wonder if this is some sort of localization failure, or if English is just a more expressive language, or if the act of reading itself is kind of interpreted differently overseas, or if the author is just really, really bad, but I suspect it's some unquantifiable cocktail of these factors. Do I have asterisks with me? Asterisks, are you here with me today? Is there no asterisks? The goal. Good English localization does exist. I've read asterisks, but I can't shake the feeling that this book was translated very literally from Japanese, and that the localization team never showed up to work because they were home playing Halo together and kissing each other on the lips. So, what's the plot? Well, this book is split up into 4 stories, each of which goes something like this. A tragic event occurs, the main character goes back in time to confront the source of their sadness, an emotional interaction ensues, and the character returns to the present with renewed positivity and resolve. Each story imparts a beautiful message about love and loss. Oh. Except that every single message is distastefully bad. Despite its wholesome presentation, this book has woeful moral teachings. Allow me to spoil it for you. Story 1. A guy invites his girlfriend Fumiko to a cafe to tell her that he's accepted a job in America and that his flight leaves in an hour. Days later, Fumiko is still upset and visits the magical cafe with the intention of going back in time and begging her boyfriend not to leave. A fruitless task given the nature of the rules. But she does so anyway, and in the past her boyfriend says he'll return after 3 years. Fumiko realizes that her happiness lies on waiting on her non-communicative boyfriend to return. The end. Story 2. Kohtake's husband has advanced dementia and has forgotten that Kohtake is his wife, which is upsetting. She decides to go back in time to read a letter he wrote for her when he was well, even though he currently has that letter on his person in the present and has been able to give it to her for years. She swipes the letter from the past and reads thusly, "I know I am ill and will one day forget who you are. When this happens, I want you to leave me and live your own life free from obligations." Overcome with emotion, Kohtake decides to redouble her efforts to be a good wife to her mentally deteriorating husband. Here is an actual scene from the book following Kohtake's decision. Oh my god. Hello, do I know you? I'm your wife, silly. Well, would you mind sitting somewhere else? No way, Jose, because we're married. Waiter, could you please remove this woman? The end. Story 3. A little bit of backstory here. Hirai's parents run an inn, and they expect that she will one day take over that role. Hirai is a free spirit, however, and she moves to the city where she runs a successful bar. Because of this transgression, her parents cut all contact with her, and her younger sister is left to take over the inn instead. Every year, the sister makes the 10-hour round trip to the city to ask her sister to return. But Hirai would rather hide under the counter than actually talk to the poor woman. Good lord. Lo, the sister unexpectedly dies in a car crash. Hirai goes back in time to talk to her the day she dies, and, racked with guilt, promises that she'll return to the inn so that they can run it together like she's always wanted. It's a spur-of-the-moment white lie, but at the very least her sister can spend her last day happy, and Hirai can return to her dream job. As you may have guessed though, stupidity prevails. Even though she hates the job, even though her sister's dream cannot be realised, Hirai returns back to the inn to work for the people who cut her out of their lives just for moving out of home. The end. I hope you hated those last three, because those were just appetizers. Story 4. Kay was born with a weak heart and has spent her life in and out of the hospital. She falls pregnant and at just 4 weeks of pregnancy is barely able to stand. The doctors have told her that childbirth will likely kill her and her unborn child, and that she should terminate ASAP. She decides to go to the future so that she can... What, you didn't know that she could go to the future? No one told you that was an option? Just accept it. Kay goes to the future to see what the result of her pregnancy is. Very smart. She discovers that while her daughter survives the birth, she does not. So she returns to the present and, with a heavy heart, announces her decision to terminate the pregnancy. Nah, I'm just messing with you. I am admitting myself to the hospital and will never return. "8 months. She condemns herself to 8 months of hospitalized suffering and death so that she can offload a child that is currently smaller than a poppy seed onto her soon-to-be widowed husband." I sure hope they don't turn this into a feature film. The end. So, was it me you came to visit? No way. Me? Did you come to visit me? No. Me? No. It's when this door opens that the... It's when this door opens that the bell sounds. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Go for your walk. I'm not coming with you, I'm recording.